Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Good morning and welcome back to the lecture series on partition of India in print media and cinema. So, today we are going to continue our discussions on the accounts of the survivor. Our discussion will be on an important work, a seminal work by Jyotirmoyi Devi, the much acclaimed novel called Epar Ganga, Opar Ganga in Bengali, and it has been translated as the river churning. So, Epar Ganga, Opar Ganga or the river churning by Jyotirmoyi Devi, it was originally written in 1967, and it is an epoch making novel that explained the broader context of the literature of partition, and its focus has been on the theme of dislocation and violence on the woman. So, Epar Ganga, Opar Ganga was first published in 1967 in Bengali as Itihashe Stree Parva or Women's Chapter in History in the annual issue of the prestigious Bengali periodical. So, prestigious Bengali periodical Probashi. Now, Epar Ganga, Opar Ganga talks about how the subject of a dislocation can be explored with insight and sensitivity, and it narrates the human history of partition once again and tries to fill the gaps that have been created by the conventional nationalist historiography of freedom movement. The novel disrupts the representative economy of female chastity and honor that is imagined around or that centers the body of the woman, and the patriarchal values that inform such an economy. So, the river churning's female protagonist Sutara Datta is an embodied subject for whom victimization registers at multiple levels, at the level of the body, at the level of the psyche, and then at the level of the society. So, the stronger emphasis on the gendered refugee is created in the novel by Jyotirmoyi Devi by gendering the category of the refugee itself. So, all refugees in this story are shown as women. So, the focus, the discourse of partition violence in the novel is fashioned through the experiences that women from different parts of India have suffered. So, the violence through the violence that women from different parts of India have suffered. So, the discourse of partition violence is shaped or fashioned in the novel through locating on the or through focusing on the experiences of women from different parts of India and their sufferance. So, the river churning constructs a critique that applied not only to the refugee women and the extraordinary situation of upheaval, the extraordinary situation of upheaval that they faced, but the historical condition of being a woman in general in a given social context. So, it is not only talking about, it is placing, it is locating the violence of partition within the larger context of patriarchal violence that a woman encounters on an everyday basis. So, it speaks to the contradictory demands of a representation by both the historical and the traumatic. So, river churning relates women's marginality within the linguistic community to the absence of the women's chapter within the collective memory and institutional history. So, river churning is at the outset, we see in the preface Jyotirmoyi Devi is referring to Mahabharat. There is an allusion to Mahabharat and how the women's chapter is deliberately silenced. There she says that there is no ink to actually depict, to delineate what happened to the women, to describe the fate of the women. And so, this is actually referring to the systematic erasure of the gender dimension in the public history, in the public memory of the partition. So, the novel portrays the standpoint of the marginal refugee woman and how the possibility and even permissibility of available language has a gendered nature. The novel Jyotirmoyi Devi wants to probe why it is not possible for the refugee woman to speak about her experience. So, the novel is it is written against the backdrop of the 1946 Noakhali riots in pre-partition East Bengal, and it talks about the experience, the encounters of an allegedly polluted refugee woman in Calcutta and Delhi. The critics of this novel such as Jashodhara Bagchi and Shubharanjan Dasgupta say that though there is a general belief that rape was less marked a presence in the Bengal partition, the fear of rape was enough to marginalize women and to prevent them from being accepted by their own community. So, the story, the plot of the river churning goes like this. It centers the life of Sutara Datta, who is the daughter of a Bhadralok schoolmaster in a village that is located in the Noakhali district of East Bengal. During the pre-partition communal riots of 1946, the local Muslim subalterns, mainly from the Dalit peasant groups who also work as domestics in Sutara's homestead, come and kill her father. They most probably rape and abduct her mother and sister, which has been implied but never directly mentioned in the text, and these peasants burn down their ancestral homestead. The village schoolmasters, the village school's headmaster Tamijuddin Sahib, a Muslim neighbor, rescues Sutara, and after the subsiding of the riots, he consigns her to her brother's custody in Calcutta. Now, in her brother's in-law's house in Calcutta, it is a joint middle class joint family setup. Sutara faces discrimination and she is treated as an untouchable because she is a refugee orphan from East Bengal, and people would members in the family would guess that she has so she is, because she is a refugee orphan from East Bengal who has allegedly lost her caste by living with the Muslims in a Muslim man's house, and also tacitly, although not directly said, tacitly, because people imagine, people guess that she has been raped. So, her brother's relatives send her to the boarding school, because she is not accepted within the joint family setup. She is sent to boarding school, and in the course of time she grows up to become a history teacher in a women's college in Delhi. So, her presence, her post partition presence in Calcutta and in Delhi is marked by a silence about the entire episode in Noakhali. So, there is a silence on her part about the Noakhali episode, and there is a persistent pain that is choking her. So, she leads a sequestered life until a man called Pramod proposes to marry her. So, in the first part of the novel, the narrative is recounted as a flashback, and there is a narration. The narrative is recounted as a flashback, and it tells the reader about the onslaught on the family by Muslim peasants. So, there are several details about the physical violence done to Sutara, but the narrative does not actually tell us whether the violence has a sexual meaning or a sexual aspect. So, one does not know for sure if Sutara has been raped. She is brought back to life. She is rescued and nursed by the neighbor Tamij Sahib and his family. So, after regaining her health, she wants to be connected to her family members in Calcutta, who actually who are actually reluctant to take her back. However, Tamij Sahib and his sons risk their own lives while accompanying Sutara to Calcutta, and then they reunite her to her to the surviving members of her family. They unite her to the surviving members of her family. Now, the second part is also recounted as a flashback. It tells the story of Sutara from the time of coming to Calcutta as a familyless refugee woman until the present time, present moment of the narration. So, she is considered as tainted, as polluted by the members of her brothers-in-law's family, and although it is not made explicit, the stigma of a possible rape also remains part of this alleged notion of pollution, centering Sutara. So, she is especially excluded from the kitchen and not allowed to touch the drinking water, and so she grows up with the most pressing threat felt. So, from the moment Sutara arrives and starts to live in the house, there is a pressing threat felt by the host family, especially the women in the family, and the threat is posed in the form of her sexuality. Her sexuality is viewed as that of an outcast, unmarried and unmarriageable woman who could actually pollute the rest of the members. So, in the plot line in the novel, we see there are obsessive discussions of Sutara's problems in the family, and so it becomes the problem of Sutara. It slips into a kind of phrase. Sutara is Sutara becomes synonymous with problem, with crisis that the hosts face as a result of having her. So, the text actually uses the phrase Sutara problem or Sutara samasya. So, this actually echoes the this reverberates the larger situation where women's question posed a huge threat to the idea of a sanctified and a morally righteous nation. And so, the process of cleansing was rigorously followed at all levels of society. So, Sutara is perceived as a predicament and as a threat or a nuisance. She echoes the refugee problem that the host society Calcutta and West Bengal was going through at that time. So, Sutara problem echoes the rhetoric of the refugee problem posed by the East Bengali refugees to Calcutta and West Bengal. So, in the third part of the novel, we see Sutara moving to Delhi as a lecturer of history and living there as an outcast from her larger community in Calcutta. Even as she visits one of the family occasions, she joins her family to attend a wedding. She is treated as an outsider. She is treated, I mean, she is treated as someone unwanted, and it ends in her her reunion with the family ends in utter humiliation. So, towards the end of the novel, we see Tamijuddin Sahib's wife proposes a match between her son Aziz and Sutara, but Sutara rejects such a match. And so, at the end of the book, the gentleman called Pramod proposes marriage to her, and although it is not stated, in all probability it is it is implied, it is strongly indicated that Sutara accepts the proposal. Now, critics have read this novel as a rich site that talks about women's the question of women's bodily honor, the question of what is speakable, and the problem of a socially permissible language to describe the woman's suffering. So, Poulomi Chakraborty, for example, argued, Poulomi Chakraborty critiques the gendered limitations of the socially possible language. So, the question of what could be said, how much could be said, the threshold that needed to be crossed, and who would believe such a woman. So, Jyotirmoyi Devi portrays the silence of the surviving victims, and the silence that is institutionalized at various levels. For example, there is a prohibition on the survivors in the hostel where Sutara is relocated. In the hostel that is run by the missionaries where Sutara is relocated, there is an institutional prohibition on the survivors to talk about talking on their experiences. So, although at a later stage she is not bound by such institutional prohibition, silence persists. Sutara cannot overcome the silence and put into words the pain that she feels or the violence that is in her mind. In fact, her mind becomes a blind spot that the reader never gets to know. How much she knows? Does she know? And what does she know? Sutara herself remembers nothing between the moment of blackout and her regaining consciousness several days later in the house of Tamij Sahib. But this would also be something problematic to say, that she knows nothing. Like I said, it is I mean, how much the degree of remembrance, the extent of what is remembered and how it is remembered is something that the reader is never the reader is never permitted to explore. The reader never gets to know what Sutara, how much Sutara remembers. So, as a young girl that is deep in shock, she is revisited by the fragmented memories, and of course, one can understand that parts of such a memory cannot be retrieved. What actually happens to Sutara is therefore cognitively unavailable, not only to the readers and to the other characters in the novel, but to Sutara herself. So, this notion or a tacit understanding that she has been raped, she has indeed been raped, is scattered throughout the novel. It is never established, but there are brief references. So, there is a brief mention by the narrator that Sutara was so shattered physically and psychologically that she could not get up from the bed. And she keeps asking, after regaining consciousness, she keeps asking, did she fall to the ground or was she pushed down? What happened after that? So, we also have to understand that here we are trying to we are trying to decipher the mind not only of a female riot victim, but also that of a juvenile who may not be familiar with the idea of rape altogether. So, she does not really know what has happened to her. So, and then we see that the adult Sutara in hindsight, through retrospection, is trying to study her juvenile self. So, this is a very complicated terrain of memory that the reader is being taken to. So, Tamil Sahib's wife, for example, is using very mild or euphemistic, she is providing a euphemistic explanation to Sutara. So, or mild expression, I mean, Tamil Sahib's wife is trying to explain Sutara in a way that a child can understand. So, the sight of the fire and all those ruffians was too much for you, and that is why you fainted. Then you had an attack of fever from shock, and you are going to be all right. So, the euphemism is a way of averting, of dodging the encounter with the experience in the form of memory head on. So, there is no direct facing up to the fact throughout the novel. So, Aziz, Tamil Sahib's elder son, later remembers this night and speaks of finding Sutara as a bundle of clothes that are lying in a pool of blood. So, beyond these fragmentary, somewhat contradictory details, no other specifics of the assault on Sutara are disclosed by the narrator. Now, there are several critical comments regarding the silence that pervades in the novel, throughout the novel. So, the pervasive silence throughout the novel. So, so there are several critics commenting on the pervasive silence that the pervasive silence throughout the river churning. For example, Debali Mukherjee Leonard says that there is no scope for reading the unspoken by the author narrator as an act of uncritical shame or as a residual prudery of a post-Victorian novelist. Because so Mukherjee Leonard would go on to say or argue that the absence of the word rape or any direct description does not simply mean that Jyotirmoyi Devi is maintaining some sort of Victorian or middle class prudery as a way of refraining from using a direct word such as rape. So, the Bengali equivalent of the word rape occurs quite often in Devi's writing, especially in her essays. So, Leonard argues that the details of the assault on Sutara are omitted because the veiling of a bodily trauma through language constitutes a counter discourse to the economy of display of woman. So, her silence, according to Leonard, the way she reads the novel, is a kind of, it constitutes a counter discourse. Similarly, Jashodhara Bagchi says that Sutara's experience was hit twice by patriarchy. A physical assault on a woman's body and sexuality by a male of one community that establishes his own identity by referring his territoriality over her body, and then there is affliction caused by her own community that exclude her and subject her to a prolonged and unbearable panopticist gaze by the community over Sutara's body and mind. So, because there is this panopticist gaze and there is the silence is constantly kind of challenged by so much that is being spoken about Sutara, and I mean so much of the collective gaze on her body and the speculations regarding what might have happened to her. For this reason, the narrative disallows the reader's gaze to dwell on Sutara's body. Gilles Ledoux states that the writing sought, Devi's work sought to redirect the gaze of the reader or the researcher away from women's bodies and sexuality, which have been sites always under surveillance of community and the state. So, Leonard similarly argues that by keeping silent on the details of the assault, the novel recovers something of the private pain that the woman suffered, or rather that women suffered during partition. So, what I was trying to say is that the silence is constantly competing with and trying to outlive the discussions that are you know, almost the discussions that are not directly part of the novel, but something that Devi implies as part of the curious gaze that shapes the curious gaze of the family members. What might have happened to Sutara? So, the silence wants to, as a way of it's a way of reclaiming the woman's dignity that could have been taken away through too much discussion about the incident in her village, the episode of violence. So, Ledoux interrupts this attempted recovery project. She says these silences and ambiguities in women's stories should not be resolved, accounted for, unveiled or recovered, but they should rather be understood as women's inability to subsume their experience within projects of patriarchal modernity that has produced them in the first place. So, she is critiquing this imperative to recover, and so river churning is outright, the novel is an outright refusal on the face of trying to recover the woman's experience, and she uses she is referring to Gayatri Spivak's suggestion of treating loss as loss. So, we see Poulami Chakraborty talking about the legal definition of rape and the basic incommensurability between female understanding of rape and legal definition of it. So, how much a woman can talk about an incident that is based on the centrality of the phallus. She is not only acted upon, but in the entire discourse she occupies a marginal and a a very she occupies a marginal position, where the question of reconstructing or recounting, bringing the incident back or reconstructing the incident through language again is challenging, it is difficult. And the question of believability, who is going to believe such a woman when she is trying to reconstruct the incident through language? Is there even such a language that exists in a society? So, in the river churning, we see that the rape is not at the climax of the plot at the outset. So, the rape incident happens at the beginning, and so Rajeshwari Sundarajan reads it as a way of getting to a it is a way of arriving at a liberated narrative structure, forming or shaping a liberated narrative structure. So, Sundarajan would go on to say that the position of the rape scene at the beginning preempts expectation of its later occurrence. Not only is the scene of rape diminished by this positioning, but it is also granted a more purely functional purpose in the narrative economy, and narrative interest becomes displaced upon what follows. So, critics note that the departure of the river churning from the general narrative conventions, where rape is always at the climax, and choosing to be silent on the details of the assault on Sutara, what is the nature of the assault, is something that the narrative never gives away. It offers as a result, it is a way of offering a critique of the linguistic community. Is there a language to tell Sutara's story without participating in the violence against her? So, is there a language to recount Sutara's story without abetting, without participating in the violence against her? So, it puts the responsibility of receiving a difficult narrative on the hearer as much as on the speaker, demanding a different plane or a different form of listening, right. So, there is a point where the novels, there is a point where the narrator's silence and Sutara's silence actually resonate, and there is an agreement to remain quiet so that we can hear the inability, the disabled nature of language in the case of a marginalized character such as Sutara. So, Gilles Ledoux would say that the silence in women's accounts of sectarian violence that accompanied partition is a sign of their inability to find a language to articulate their experience without invoking metaphors of purity and pollution, and thereby subscribing to the parameters set forth by patriarchy and the patriarchal society. With this, I would like to stop today's lecture, and we would meet again with another round of discussions. Thank you.